Hello everyone, welcome to the discussion on NEET 2020 paper. So this is part 1 video where we'll be discussing first 25 questions from the set G5. Now those who are looking at this video for the practice purpose, what you can keep in mind is that the difference between the various sets of papers is only in terms of the order of questions. So even if you look at other sets of paper, right, you'll see same questions but the order will be different. Okay, so we'll start with the discussion. So look at question number 1. So this is a question from the topic biomolecules. So it's a kind of a memory based question. Sucrose on hydrolysis gives. So if you read the options, right, what are the options given to us? Option 1 is alpha D glucose and beta D glucose. Option 2 is alpha D glucose and beta D fructose. Option 3 is alpha D fructose and beta D fructose. Option 4 is what? Beta D glucose and alpha D fructose. So here if you look at even we have this in the NCERT. So the hydrolysis of sucrose, it will be giving us alpha D glucose and beta D fructose. The projections we are drawing here, the structures, right, what do we call them as? We will call them as the Haworth projections. So here just more from the differentiation between the alpha and beta anomers. So for the D glucose, right, we'll have alpha form and beta form. Similarly for the D fructose, we'll have alpha form and then beta form. So what is the difference between the alpha and beta? So we got our answer for this. So what is the answer for this? It is alpha D glucose and beta D fructose. So what is the answer for this? This is a question based on the elimination reaction. So we will get this in hydrocarbon chapter +1, as well as we will also have it in the alkyl halides and aryl halides chapter in +2. The elimination of 2-bromo-pentane to form pent-2-ene. So what is this elimination we are looking at here? Elimination in the presence of alcoholic KOH. What is this? So we will call it as what? Dehydrohalogenation. So if you have 2-bromo-pentane, so look at this. So 1, 2 on the second carbon we have the bromine. Okay, so 2-bromo-pentane in the presence of alcoholic KOH, right? What we will see, the bromine will be eliminated from the carbon 2. From the adjacent carbon, see, whichever carbon the functional group is directly attached, we will call that carbon as what? Alpha carbon. Adjacent to that, on either side we will have, this side we have one carbon, other side we will have another carbon. So we will call them as what? Beta carbons. Okay, so bromine will be released from the alpha carbon and hydrogen will be removed from the beta carbon. That is the reason why we will call it as what? Beta elimination. So the hydrogen will be taking it from where? The beta carbon. That is why this reaction is also called as what? Beta elimination reaction. Okay, and when we want to eliminate the hydrogen from the beta carbon, we will have two possibilities here. We can eliminate the hydrogen from carbon 1, where we will get pent-1-ene. If we eliminate the hydrogen from carbon 3, we will get pent-2-ene. But between these two, right, the pent-2-ene is more substituted alkene. So more substituted alkenes are more stable. Okay, so based on the hyperconjugation. So here we are going to get more pent-2-ene and pent-1-ene will be what? Minor product. So here this follows what we call as the Zaitsev rule. So what is this Zaitsev rule? It basically says when there are two possibilities of getting the alkenes in elimination reaction, the major one will be what? The alkene that is more substituted. The major one will be what? The alkene that is more substituted. What do you mean by substituted alkene? If you look at the alkene here, right, it is having only, like if you just try to look at it, so we'll have what? This carbon, the terminal carbon will have only hydrogens. Okay, the other carbon is attached to one hydrogen and other side, what is it? The other side will be C3 H7. Okay, so that is what we will be having. So we have only one group attached to the alkene carbons. Okay, whereas here we will see that there will be two groups. This side we have an alkyl group, that side also we have an alkyl group. So that becomes what? More substituted alkene. Okay, so this follows the Zaitsev rule, where we will get more substituted alkene as the major product. Okay, and of course So here we are removing hydrogen and bromine, right? So what do we call it as? We'll call it as dehydrohalogenation. What do you call it as? Dehydrohalogenation. Okay. So here they are giving us, statements A, B, C, D. So we have to tell which of the combinations is appropriate. So look at it. Statement A is what? Beta elimination. That is what we are saying, right? It is a beta elimination. So why do we call it as beta elimination? Because the hydrogen is being removed from the beta carbon. It follows Zaitsev rule because the major product will be what? More substituted. Okay. We call it as dehydrohalogenation. But is it a dehydration? No, right? It's not a dehydration reaction. So dehydration reaction is when we have alcohols in the presence of concentrated sulfuric acid, dehydrating agent, right? That is a different reaction. There also we will get alkenes. So here what is the appropriate match? A, B, C, which means the correct answer for this is what? Option 4. So this is beta elimination. This follows the Zaitsev rule, and also this is what? Dehydrohalogenation reaction. Next we'll go to question number 3. This is a question based on the electrochemistry, Faraday's laws of electrolysis. The number of Faradays required to produce 20 grams of calcium from the molten calcium chloride. So when we do electrolysis of molten calcium chloride, right, what are the ions present in the solution? These are calcium 2 plus ions. What is the valency of calcium here? 2. They are giving us atomic mass of calcium. What is the atomic mass of calcium? We'll probably remember it, but they are giving us a value. What is it? 40 gram per mole. We need to find what is the number of Faradays of charge that is required. See, when we are trying to do the Faraday's electrolysis questions by taking the charge in terms of Faraday unit, right, what we need to keep in mind is 1 Faraday of charge. What is 1 Faraday of charge? 1 Faraday of charge is charge on 1 mole of electrons. 1 Faraday of charge will be able to deposit or liberate 1 equivalent of that substance. Whether you take the product at the cathode or product at anode, it will be able to liberate how much amount? 1 equivalent. Okay. So if you look at the significance of the relation between the charge Faraday value and the amount of substance, what is it? Every 1 Faraday charge, which is the charge on 1 mole of electrons, that much will be able to liberate 1 equivalent of any substance. So here we need to find what is the equivalent weight of calcium, because calcium is present as what? Divalent, right? So remember, for the ions, what will be the equivalent mass formula? It will be the atomic mass divided by the valency. Here what is the valency for the calcium? 2, which means what? Atomic weight is 40 divided by 2, that is going to be 20 grams. That is the equivalent weight. Okay. So here they are saying what? Simply 20 grams of calcium is required. But what is the 20 grams in terms of number of equivalents? How do you find number of moles of a substance? Given mass by molar mass. Okay. How do you find number of equivalents? Given mass by equivalent mass. So given mass, I mean the mass that we are looking to produce, what is it? 20 grams. Divided by equivalent mass is what? Just now we calculated 20. So 20 by 20 will be what? 1. So number of equivalents of calcium is what? 1. Already we are saying, right, the significance of the equivalent. 1 equivalent of a substance, right? 1 equivalent of a substance will require how much amount of charge? 1 Faraday charge. Here the amount that we are looking to produce is what? 20 grams means 1 equivalent. So how much charge we are going to require? We are going to be requiring just 1 Faraday charge. So what is the answer for this? Option 4. We will be requiring just 1 Faraday charge. Okay. So probably we may even look at the Faraday's equation for the electrolysis. What is it? If you consider the charge in Faraday, then what is the equation? W, weight of the substance deposited, is equal to what? E into Q. Q should be in Faraday. Okay. 1 Faraday means we'll get 1 equivalent weight. 2 Faradays means we'll get how much? 2 into equivalent weight. 3 Faradays means we'll get 3 into equivalent weight, like that. Okay. We have another formula that will consider the charge in coulombs. What is the formula? What is it? E by 96,500 into I into T. So here this formula, right, is where we'll consider the current to be in amperes and time to be in second. So the charge will be coming in coulombs. Here the charge will be coming in what? Coulombs. This is the other version of the same formula. Okay, but here anyway we are not even using that formula because we have pretty straightforward result that is coming. Okay, so what is the answer for this? Option 4. Now moving on to next question. solid state. An element has a body centered cubic structure, BCC. Okay, so we are looking at what? The metallic lattice with a cell edge 288 picometer. What is the edge length? It is given as what? 288 picometer. We have to find the atomic radius of the element. See, for this, right, what we need to look at is the BCC arrangement. If metallic substance, okay, is arranged in BCC, so we'll have an atom at the body center and there will be atoms at the corners. If you look at any body diagonal, so what is the body diagonal? The line that you draw from one corner to exactly opposite corner. The body diagonal, right, it will be connecting the corner atom to the atom that is at the body center to the other corner atom. So what you can see is clearly, this is what? This is R, this is diameter, which is what? 2R, this is another R. So totally what we have is the body diagonal. What is the body diagonal of cube? It is root 3a. Face diagonal will be root 2a, body diagonal will be what? Root 3a. Okay, so if you look at the body diagonal, right, root 3a will be equal to what? 4 times of R. That is the relation we have. Okay, because if you consider along the body diagonal, the corner atom, the atom that is at the body center and the another corner atom, all the three will be what? Touching each other. So which means the total length, which is the body diagonal length, root 3 into a is what? A is the edge length here, and the root 3a value will be equal to what? 4 times of R. How that comes? We are able to see it from the visualization. Okay, so what is the relation we have? The R value, because that's what we are supposed to find, right? R is the radius of the atom. So R is what? So root 3a is equal to 4R, means R will be equal to what? Root 3a by 4. Okay, so here a value is given to us. What is the a value? 288 picometer. Here the lucky thing is we don't even need to simplify the answer, because sometimes what they would expect us is, they would be expecting us to substitute the value of root 3 as 1.732 and then get the final answer. But here, no, if you see, they have given the answers without the simplification. So look at this, guys. What is the answer? The atomic radius is going to be what? Root 3 by 4 into 288 picometer. So here the only thing that we need to know is the relation. The relation in terms of the edge length and the radius of the atom for a BCC arrangement. Next we have a question that's from the first and second groups, the S block. Okay, so look at this. HCl is passed through a solution of CaCl2, MgCl2 and NaCl. Which of the following compounds will crystallize? See, I mean, this question, right, we will be able to understand this even from our basic knowledge on the hardness of water. Okay, so when you talk about the permanent hardness of water, right, permanent hardness is because of what? The soluble chlorides and sulfates of both magnesium ions and then calcium ions, isn't it? See, sodium chloride will get crystallized, but the calcium chloride and magnesium chloride, right, they would be very much soluble in water, and that is the reason why we get the permanent hardness of water. So when you are passing HCl, what would happen is the crystallization of NaCl only would occur. So what is going to happen when we are passing HCl through the solution, right? What we will be able to observe is only that the NaCl would start getting crystallized, whereas the MgCl2 and CaCl2, right, they would not be crystallizing easily because they are highly soluble in water. Okay, and that is one of the reasons for the permanent hardness of water also. The soluble chlorides and sulfates of calcium ions and magnesium ions, right, that is the reason for the hardness of water. I mean, that's what we'll be able to observe in the hydrogen chapter, that comes in the hydrogen chapter. So what is the answer for this question? So what is the observation going to be? We will see only the crystallization of sodium chloride. Next we have a question on the ionic equilibrium solubility product. Find out the solubility. So here if you look at the options, right, they are giving the units as what? Capital M, means what? Molar solubility. What they are asking us? Molar solubility. So generally when we say solubility, right, what we are referring to? Molar solubility only. Find the solubility of nickel hydroxide, NaOH twice, in 0.1 molar NaOH. Means here we will have the common ion effect. What we are going to have? Common ion effect is going to be observed. What is given to us? The ionic product, which is what? KSP. The ionic product of NaOH twice, nickel hydroxide, is what? 2 into 10 power minus 5. Okay, so we need to find the solubility of the nickel hydroxide from this. So if you look at what will be the equation for the solubility of nickel hydroxide, right? When nickel hydroxide is getting dissolved, if say S is the molar solubility, then we can see from the equation of solubility, right? Every one nickel hydroxide entity will give us one nickel ion, and how many hydroxide ions will come? Two hydroxide ions. So if S is the molar solubility, then what will be the concentration of Ni2 plus ions? It will be S. What will be the concentration of OH minus ions? It will be 2S. Why it is going to be 2S? Because if you are dissolving there 1 mole, you will get 1 mole of nickel 2 plus ions and 2 moles of hydroxides will come. That is why we are having the concentration of OH minus ions is what? 2S. Now this is not the solubility of NaOH in NaOH twice in pure water. We are looking at the solubility in the presence of 0.1 molar NaOH. Means what? Here NaOH is a a substance that will be completely ionized. Okay, so if that is completely ionized, we are putting how much? 0.1 molar. Means the entire 0.1 molar of sodium hydroxide will be ionized. That is going to give us what? 0.1 molar of Na plus and 0.1 molar of OH minus. Now here the OH minus is common ion for the nickel hydroxide and then sodium hydroxide. So if you want to look at what is the total OH minus concentration, what will be the total OH minus concentration? We have to add the contribution from the solubility of nickel hydroxide, which is 2S, plus we have to add the contribution from the sodium hydroxide, the ionization, which will be 0.1. See, if you look at the KSP value of nickel hydroxide, right, what is the order? It is 2 into 10 power minus 15. Means the solubility values are going to be significantly low in comparison to, so this is what we will generally make as an broad assumption. Okay, when we see that the KSP values are in very low order. So if you see the KSP, what is the order of KSP? It is 2 into 10 power minus 15, right? So the solubility values are also going to be considerably low when we compare with what? 0.1. Whether this assumption is correct or not, we can verify. After making the assumption, we are going to now calculate what is the solubility value. Once we get the final value right, then we can cross check whether the assumption is appropriate or not. So here, since 2S is going to be small in comparison to 0.1, we can neglect it. So approximately what we can say, the OH minus concentration is going to be what? 0.1. Now look at the ionic product formula. What is it? The nickel 2 plus concentration into OH minus concentration power 2. Why power 2 will come? Because you can see the factor here or the coefficient. What is the coefficient for the OH minus? It is 2. So ionic product or KSP, which we considered, will be equal to what? The nickel ions concentration into OH minus ion concentration power 2. Okay, so the ionic product value is given to us. What is it? 2 in 10 power minus 15 is equal to what? It is equal to nickel. What is the nickel concentration? S into what is the OH minus ion concentration? We have approximated it to 0.1, right? So 0.1 the square. So if you simplify it, right, we are looking for the value of S. No, so what will be the value of S? So 0.1 square means what? It is 0.01. So S will be equal to what? 2 into 10 power minus 15 by 0.01. 0.01 means it is what? 10 power minus 2. So totally what is the S value going to be? 2 into 10 power minus 13. So that S is nothing but what? The molar solubility. That S is the molar solubility, right? So we can see molar solubility is considerably low. That is the reason why we are able to neglect. So when we are adding 2S to 0.1, look at the order, the molar solubility, what is the order? 2 in 10 power minus 13, right? So we are, that is the reason why our approximation is appropriate. Okay, so we approximated the total OH minus ion concentration to be equal to what? 0.1, isn't it? So the approximation is adequate. Okay, so the answer for this question is what? The solubility of nickel hydroxide, which is the S value. What is the answer for this? 2 into 10 power minus 13. Okay, so this is a pretty standard model of question. Even in NCERT textbook, inside the text salt examples also we have one question like this. You may take a look at that. Okay, So we'll move on to the next question. This is a question from the thermodynamics chapter, mostly theoretical question. For the reaction, what is the reaction they are giving us? Two gaseous chlorine atoms are combining to form what? One chlorine molecule. Which of the options is correct? So if you see, they are talking in terms of what? Delta H means what? Enthalpy change. And delta S means what? Entropy change. See, if you understand what is happening, right? Two gaseous atoms are combining to form one molecule. So net what do we observe? Previously we have two atoms of chlorine, gaseous atoms. Number of gaseous particles are more. And finally what we are having? Just one molecule. So two chlorine atoms, gaseous atoms, are giving rise to just one chlorine molecule. Means what? There is a decrease in the number of gaseous particles. And more gaseous particles means what? More entropy. So since there is a decrease in the number of gaseous particles, the final entropy is what? Less. So entropy change, delta S, is going to be what? It is going to be negative. Because initially we have more number of gaseous particles. Finally we will be having, as the reaction is proceeding, right, we will be having less number of gaseous particles. Means what? The entropy change, final entropy is less, initial entropy is more. Entropy change means what? Final entropy minus initial entropy, right? So entropy change will be what? Negative. Now let us talk about the enthalpy change part. So what is this? This is like formation of a chemical bond, isn't it? So two chlorine gaseous atoms, they don't have any bonding before. They are coming together to form a chemical bond. See, always chemical bond results in what? Liberation or release of energy, isn't it? Which means what? The process is going to be exothermic. Exothermic means what? Delta H is going to be what? Liberation of energy means delta H will be negative. So what do we observe? Delta H will be negative because this process is exothermic, and delta S also will be negative. Why? Because this is resulting in number of gaseous particles being reduced. Okay, so we'll go on to question number 8. This is a straight question on the strength of ligands. Okay, so this order you can pick it up from the NCERT textbook also. So what is it? Which of the following is the correct order of increasing field strength of ligands to form coordination compounds? So here we are not going to talk about the applications of the ligand strength. So in crystal field theory and all that, we look at what are the applications of the ligand strength. But here we just have to find out what is the correct order. That's it. Okay, so if you look at the order, right, so what is the order? I minus will be less than, Br minus less than, SCN minus less than, Cl minus less than, sulfide less than, F minus less than, OH minus less than, oxalate less than, H2O less than, NCS less than, EDTA less than, ammonia less than, En less than, Cn minus less than, CO. Okay, so this is the order we have. Okay, so here the only way to answer these kind of questions is to appropriately find either a mnemonic to remember this order, or to simply look at memorizing or alternative methods of memorizing this order, break it into parts and then memorize it. Okay, but this question can be answered if we are able to remember this order. So look at this. What is the appropriate order? Here we see it is option 4. So SCN will be less than F minus, I'm just dotting them out. Okay, will be less than C2O4 2 minus oxalate, will be less than Cl minus. So this is the order, the field strength order. Okay, so sometimes these kind of questions, right, those who are able to remember this, they will be able to just get the marks like that. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question, question number 9. So this is a question based on the spin magnetic moment. Either we can look at it as a question from the D block or question from the atomic structure chapter. Okay, because we'll talk about the spin only magnetic moment in both the chapters. So what are we supposed to find? The calculated spin only magnetic moment of Cr2 plus ion. So how do we calculate? So we know that the spin only magnetic moment will depend upon the number of unpaired electrons, right? So first we should know how many number of unpaired electrons are there in Cr2 plus ion. For that, what we will do? Let us first look at the chromium. So chromium, what is the electronic configuration? So instead of representing so argon means what? 1s2 2s2, okay, 2p6 3s2 3p6. Instead of representing all of this, we will put it as what? Argon. So this is the electronic configuration representation simplified form by using the appropriate inert gas arrangement. Okay, so chromium can be written as what? Argon 3d5 4s1. abnormal arrangement, right? Because of the half-filled d subshell stability. So we'll have instead of 4s2 3d4, we'll be having what? 3d5 4s1. That is the chromium. So chromium 2 plus means what? We have to remove 2 electrons. So first electron to be removed will be from the outermost shell, which is the fourth shell. So we'll remove this. That is the first electron to be removed. Second electron is going to be removed from the 3d level. So the chromium 2 plus, what is the arrangement? It will be argon 3d4. Now 3d4 means what? In the d orbitals, so we'll have 5 orbitals, right? 1 2 3 4 5. How are we going to fill the electrons? By following the Hund's rule. So we have to fill one orbital each with electron having parallel spin. So what do we see here? Number of unpaired electrons is what? 4. If the number of unpaired electrons is 4, what is the formula for the spin only magnetic moment? Spin only magnetic moment will be equal to what? Root of n into n plus 2 Bohr magneton. What is the unit for this? Bohr magneton. Okay. Here what is n representing number of unpaired electrons? So root of 4 into 4 plus 2. 4 plus 2 is what? 6. Root 4 into 6 is what? 24. Root 24. Root 25 is 5. Means it will be little bit less than 5. I mean, that way also we can conclude it. So what is the answer for this? It is 4.9 Bohr magneton. Because if you see the other options, right, they are not close by. So sometimes, when we have questions like this, right, we do get this consideration. The options will not be given pretty close by, so that we will be able to appropriately choose. Because root 25 is what? 5, right? Root 24 means less than, little bit less than 5. So it cannot be 5.92, it cannot be 2.84, not that much less. It cannot be even 3.87. Okay. We'll move on to question number 10. This is a question on the chemical bonding chapter. So related to the dipole moment. Which of the following set of molecules will have zero dipole moment? See, these kind of questions, right? This is like they are squeezing 4 questions into one. The only way we can answer it, we have to go through each and every option. Then only we will be able to answer. Okay. So we look at option 1, boron trifluoride means what? BF3. So BF3 will have BF3, right? Will be having what? So if you look at BF3, it will have a trigonal planar structure. What will be the structure of BF3? It will be what? Trigonal planar. Okay. So the boron fluorine bonds, right? Each of the bonds will have a dipole moment. But trigonal planar means what? They will be symmetrically distributed. So the dipole moments will cancel each other. There will be what? There will be a cancellation of the dipole moment. So what we will be able to observe is cancellation of the dipole moment. So BF3 will have as a molecule totally, what will be the dipole moment? 0. Okay. Look at the next one, hydrogen fluoride, HF. So HF means what? Just one hydrogen attached to fluorine. So we'll have a dipole moment here, right? So this molecule is going to be having a net dipole moment. So option 1 is not going to be the answer. So here, we are not going to spend some more time on it, because we already saw that, okay, one of these molecules is having a net dipole moment, which means what? That is not the answer. So we'll have to keep checking the other ones. Look at option 2, nitrogen trifluoride. See, in case of NF3, right? In fact, no. So in NCERT, you will have this question, why NH3 will have more dipole moment than NF3. Okay. So here, the nitrogen will be having both the bond dipole moment as well as the lone pair dipole moment. So what is observed is the bond dipole moments, because of the nitrogen fluorine bonds, and the lone pair dipole moment, they would to some extent cancel each other. Not exactly completely cancelling, they would some extent cancel each other. That is the reason why NF3 will have more dipole moment than NH3. Because in NH3 what happens? The bond dipole moment and the lone pair dipole moment, they will have the same orientation. They will be adding to each other. Okay, that is a different question. We are not discussing about it here. But yeah, nitrogen trifluoride is what? It is going to be having net dipole moment. So which means this is also not going to be the answer. Let us come to option 3, boron trifluoride. Just now we saw that it is what? Cancellation of the dipole moment because of the symmetric arrangement of the boron fluorine bonds. Then beryllium difluoride, BeF2. So what is BeF2? We can see BeF2, again, it's a linear molecule, right? So both the beryllium fluorine bonds, they will be cancelling each other, dipole moment. Then carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what? C, linear molecule. So on either side, we'll have the dipole moments cancelling. Next one is what? 1, 4 dichlorobenzene. What is this? This is a para form. Okay, so we have a chlorine on the 1 carbon, then 2, then 3, then 4. 1, 4 dichlorobenzene. So what do we see here? Here also the carbon chlorine dipole moments, they will be cancelling each other because it is the para form, right? So they will be cancelling each other. So in this, right, all the 4 molecules they have given, the dipole moments are basically cancelling each other. Now coming to option 4, so we got our answer. What is it? Option 3 is the answer. But looking at option 4, right, what is option 4? Ammonia. So just now only we were discussing about it, right? Ammonia, the dipole moment, bond dipole moment and the lone pair dipole moment, they will add on to each other. They will be in the same orientation. That is why the ammonia dipole moment will be more than the NF3 dipole moment. Okay, so this also will have a dipole moment. So this is also not the answer. So what is the correct answer for this? Option 3. All the molecules are what? Total dipole moment is 0. Next we have question number 11. So this is sort of memory based question. The following metal ion activates many enzymes, participates in the oxidation of glucose to produce ATP with sodium. So here, when they generally say things like, it activates many enzymes, that is not the clear hint to identify. This is the clear hint. So the metal ion is participating in the oxidation of glucose to produce ATP. This is the clear hint. Okay, so what is that ion? It is the potassium, and with sodium is responsible for the transmission of the nerve signals. So this is also the role of potassium. So what is it? If you look at it, right, potassium, it will participate in the oxidation of glucose to produce ATP. Not only that, it will be converting glucose into glycogen. Okay, that is the form in which the energy will be stored in the liver. Okay, then we have the other role of potassium is what? It will help in the transmission of the nerve signal. So the other ion that will play a role here is what? Sodium ion. And of course it also plays a role in activating enzymes that will be useful for the metabolic activities. Okay, so here these kind of questions, right, whenever we have these kind of questions, we have to look for that most appropriate hint that will actually help us in identifying. So what is the answer for this one? Potassium. Next we'll go to question number 12. This is a question on the ozonolysis. It's from the hydrocarbons chapter. Alkene on ozonolysis gives methanol. What is methanol? HCHO. Okay, the first member of the aldehydes as one of the product. Its structure is. Now here the ozonolysis we are talking about is what? It is the reductive ozonolysis. What is the ozonolysis we are talking about? Reductive ozonolysis. Okay, so when we have reductive ozonolysis products, what will be the products of the reductive ozonolysis? Aldehydes or ketones. Okay, now if you want to get a methanol as a product, then we must have a terminal alkene. So only when we have a terminal alkene, right, the terminal alkene only is going to be giving us the methanol. So how, if you look at the ozonolysis reaction, first we are going to be forming the ozonide complex. Okay, the ozonide complex will break down the cleavage of ozonide complex. We can do in two manner, either the reductive cleavage or the oxidative cleavage. So here when you do the reductive cleavage, right, what are we going to get? We are going to be getting, so reductive cleavage we will do in the presence of zinc, water, etc. Okay, the reductive cleavage is going to be giving us the aldehydes and ketones. Cyclic alkenes means they will give us only one product. Cyclic alkenes, when you cleavage the product, right, we'll get only one product, but that will have two carbonyl groups. That one product is going to be having two carbonyl groups. Okay, so here the hint is what? We should get a methanol as one product. Means what? The alkene must be a terminal alkene. So what is the terminal alkene? You just check the options given. Only in option 2 we have a terminal alkene. You can observe only in option 2 we have a terminal alkene here. So if you look at what will be the ozonolysis of this, right, so we have a terminal alkene when we form the ozonide complex. So ozonide complex will be formed onto the double bond. So you can see CHO, CH2. So this is the ozonide complex. Okay, the ozonide complex, when we do the reductive cleavage, zinc in water, so what we are going to get? This side we are going to get an aldehyde, and this side also we are going to be getting aldehyde. Ketones we will get depending upon the carbon. So when we have the carbon which is an carbon attached to two more carbons, okay, then we are going to be getting what? We are going to be getting an ketone. But here we are going to get both of them as what? Aldehydes. So what we can see here is that one of the product will be what? Methanol, and the other one will be the aldehyde as well. So here the hint that is given to us is what? We should get one of the product as the methanol. So the only option that will satisfy this is what? Option 2. So these kind of questions are important. I mean, even in some of the previous years also they have asked these kind of questions, like they give us the ozonolysis products and they will ask us what is the original alkene, like that. Okay, moving on to the next question, question number 13. This is a question based on the chemical kinetics. The rate constant of a first order reaction is given. Okay, what is this? 4.606 into 10 power minus 3 second inverse. Even if they don't mention, right, if you look at the unit of rate constant, we can tell this is what? First order. If you look at the unit of rate constant will be independent of concentration term only for the first order reactions, isn't it? The time required to reduce 20 grams of the reactant to 0.2 grams. This is in fact a straight question based on the application of the integrated rate expression for the first order reaction. What is it? What is the equation? K is equal to what? 2.303 by T into log of A naught by A. This is the integrated rate expression for the first order reaction. In this K is given to us. What is the K value? 4.606 in 10 power minus 3 is equal to what? 2.303 by T into log A naught. A naught is what? The original concentration or the initial concentration. A is what? A is the final concentration. Okay, so original concentration is what? 2 grams. Divide by what is the final concentration? We are looking at 0.2. So 2 by 0.2. What is 2 by 0.2? 10. Okay, so what we will be having is the T is what we are looking for, right? We will take the T to the left side and bring the 4.606 into 10 power minus 3 to the right side. It will go to the denominator. So T will be equal to what? 2.303 divided by 4.606 into 10 power minus 3 into log 10. What is log 10? Log 10 is 1. What is log 10 value? It is 1. Okay, now 2.303 ones, 2.303 twos. 10 power minus 3 will go to the numerator. It will become what? 10 power 3. So what is 10 power 3 by 2? It is 500. Since the K value is in second inverse, right? Here we will get second inverse in the denominator. So T will be in terms of what? Seconds. So what is the answer for this question? It is option 2. So the time that is required to reduce 2 grams of the reactant to 0.2 grams. What is the next? We have a question based on the Grignard's reagent. The question is reaction between acetone and methyl magnesium chloride. What is methyl magnesium chloride? CH3MgCl. So this is in the general formula for the Grignard reagent. What is it? RMgX. X can be a chlorine or a bromine. Okay. Followed by the hydrolysis. So first the Grignard reagent is reacting with the acetone, and then we are doing the hydrolysis. This is a very standard reaction. So what is going to happen when we are reacting Grignard reagent with acetone? There will be addition across the CO bond. So Grignard reagent will be dissociated into CH3 minus and MgCl plus. So CH3 minus will be adding onto the carbon, and MgCl plus will be adding onto the oxygen. So we will get the complex. So this is the complex we will be having. The CH3 is added to the carbon and MgCl is added to the oxygen. When we do the hydrolysis, right, reaction with water, what we are going to see is so water will dissociate into H plus and OH minus. H plus will attach to the oxygen and OH minus will go along with the MgCl. Means we are going to get, so for the oxygen H will come. So what we will be essentially having is, this is our product. What is it? Common name for this is tertiary butyl alcohol. What is the common name for this? Is the tertiary butyl alcohol. Okay, and of course we'll have MgOHCl. That also will be there. Okay, so what is the answer for this question? Option 2. We'll be getting tertiary butyl alcohol as the product. Next we have question number 15. Which of the following is a natural polymer? So what is the natural polymer? So natural polymer, here if you see the options, right, so we have one very prominent option that is visible at the bottom. So what is it? Cis 1,4 polyisoprene. What is it? It is the form of natural rubber. So how do we get the natural rubber? We will get it from the latex, right? So the natural polymer is what? Cis 1,4-polyisoprene. So this will be the structure of it. Okay, so next, moving on to question number 16. Identify the correct statements from the following. So this kind of questions we have to read through each and every statement, then only we will be able to answer it. What is the statement A? CO2 gas is used as a refrigerant for ice cream and frozen food. Not CO2 gas. The dry ice, which is the CO2 solid, is the one that is used as a prominent refrigerant. I mean, so if not like recent times, but at least before 1940s and 1950s, right? The dry ice used to be one of the very popular refrigerant for whether it is ice creams or cool drinks or even for food. So why it is used is because dry ice, right? It will not undergo phase change from the solid to liquid. So the phase change will be directly from solid to gas, which we call as a sublimation. So by having the sublimation, right, the dry ice would get obviously evaporated, and the heat from that substance will be absorbed. So whatever the substance where the dry ice is kept, the heat will be absorbed from that, so that the temperature of that substance will be always maintained at a lower level. That is the mechanism that is followed for the use of dry ice as a refrigerant. Okay, but the electric refrigerators nowadays, right, they have totally replaced the dry ice refrigerant mechanism. But even today, right, some food items, especially when it comes to the frozen fish, etc., like frozen salmon or some of the food items, they still use the dry ice, which is the solid CO2, as a refrigerant. So option A is saying what? CO2 gas. It is not the CO2 gas, it is CO2 solid that is used as a refrigerant. Okay, because of its property of sublimation, it will directly convert from the solid state to gas. Now when you store some food along with normal ice also will keep the temperature low. But what is the problem? Normal ice, it will convert itself into water after some time. So the entire food will get clogged in terms of the water coming in. But here the advantage with the dry ice is what? The phase change will be not from solid to liquid, it will be directly from solid to gas. So there will be complete evaporation of the CO2. Okay, but option A is not correct. Why? Because they are saying CO2 gas, not CO2 gas but CO2 solid. Then look at option B, the structure of C60. These are fullerenes, right? C60 contains 12 6 carbons and 25 carbons. If you look at the C60 structure, right, so this is the structure of C60 molecule. It will be having not 12, but it will be having 26 membered rings and 12 5-membered rings. Okay, so here so this is again sort of a memory based question. So when we look at the allotropic forms of carbon, so this is one of the allotropic forms of carbon, fullerenes, right? So what is the number of rings that you will be able to observe in the structure? It will be in the shape of the football, but you can see there are these 5-membered rings and 6-membered rings. How many 5-membered rings and how many 6-membered rings you can see? We will be able to see 26 membered rings and 12 5-membered rings. But here they are saying something different. Look at this, they are saying 12 6-membered rings. So this is also not correct. Then what is C? ZSM5 is a type of zeolite that is used to convert alcohols into gasoline. So what is ZSM5? It's a short form for zeolite Soconi Mobile 5. So it's a aluminosilicate. So this is a class of zeolites. Okay, and these are widely used in the petroleum industry. So for the cracking reactions and also for converting the alcohols like ethanol and methanol, right, they can be converted into the forms of gasoline. So this is correct. So C is correct. D is what? Carbon monoxide is a colorless and odorless gas. Yes, carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas but poisonous. Okay, so this is also correct. So what is the answer for this? Option 3. Why? Because C is correct, D is correct. A and B are wrong statements. Okay, we'll go to the next question. Thermodynamics. The correct option for the free expansion. Free expansion means what? Expansion. What is free expansion? Expansion in vacuum or the situation where the external pressure is 0. Okay, so when the gas is expanding, there is no external pressure. So the correct option for the free expansion of an ideal gas under adiabatic condition. Adiabatic condition means what? we cover the system with adiabatic wall so that there is no heat exchange. There is no heat exchange between the system and the surrounding. Okay, which means what? Q will be equal to 0. So we have to comment on which of them is the correct option. See, the moment they say adiabatic means what? Q is 0, which means the answer must be either between 1 or 4. The answer must be between either 1 or 4. Okay, so we'll just go through it. So first, what they are saying, free expansion. Free expansion means what? When that external pressure is 0, what is the work? Work formula is what? Minus integral P external dV. This is the general formula for work, isn't it? W is equal to what? Minus integral P external dV. P external is 0 means work will be 0. In expansion in vacuum or under free expansion, the work will be equal to what? Always 0. Okay, so W is 0 and adiabatic means what? Q is 0. What is the first law formula? Delta U is equal to Q plus W, right? So Q is 0, W is 0 means delta U is also equal to what? 0. But internal energy of an ideal gas, they are saying. Internal energy of an ideal gas depends upon the temperature. Okay, internal energy of ideal gas depends upon what? Temperature. Now, if the internal energy is remaining same, means what? It is remaining constant, right? That is why delta U is 0. In fact, we also have a formula, right? What is the formula for the delta U for an ideal gas? It will be equal to NCV delta T, isn't it? Delta U 0 means what? Delta T is also 0. Means what? Temperature must be constant. Okay, when internal energy is constant, if you're talking about an ideal gas, what is the delta U formula for the ideal gas? Delta U is equal to what? N CV delta T, isn't it? So delta U 0 means delta T also will be 0, which means what is the correct answer? Check it, option 4. Q is 0 because it is adiabatic. W is 0 because it is free expansion. Q 0, W 0 means delta U is also 0. Delta U 0 means what? Because it is an ideal gas we are talking about it, delta T also must be equal to 0. Okay, we'll move on to question number 18. This is a question based on the structure, both in the 16th group, 17th group and 18th group. We do expect, even 15th group also, we expect questions based on the structures. The way, we generally get in the previous years, this year also we got a question. What is it? Which of the following oxo acid of sulfur has a OO linkage? Means we have to find out which of them will be having the OO linkage. So what is the way to answer this question? We must know the structures. So look at it. What is this? This is H2SO4. This is the structure of what? H2SO4, right? So sulfur will be double bonded to 2 oxygens and single bonded to 2 OH groups. It's a dibasic acid. Okay, so is there a OO linkage? No. So where else it is there? Look at this. What is this? This is H2S2O7. What is H2S2O7? Pyrosulfuric acid. This also has no OO linkage, but this is having what? This is having SOS linkage. In fact, I think on one of the previous years they have even asked question on this. Okay, so this is what? Pyrosulfuric acid. Okay, now in the name itself it is there. What is there? Peroxo disulfuric acid. Okay, so peroxo means what? Peroxide. Okay, so OO linkage is what we call as the peroxide. That's why the name also. So H2S2O8. Look at the structure of this. So we will be having a OO link in the peroxo disulfuric acid. What is the formula for that? H2S2O8. And H2SO3 we will not have any OO linkage. So this is what? The sulfurous acid. So what is the answer for this? Peroxo disulfuric acid. So even by looking at the name itself we will be able to tell. Otherwise, if you remember the structures means we can answer. Next we have question number 19. We have toluene reacting with chlorine in the presence of radiation. H nu is what it represents, the radiation. Okay, what will be the reaction that could happen here? There will be free radical substitution, chlorination, right? So where the hydrogens of that CH3 group will be replaced. Now the thing is, either one hydrogen can be replaced, 2 hydrogens can be replaced, or all 3 hydrogens can be replaced. It depends upon the concentration of chlorine and also the duration of the chlorination. So we'll get X as the product, because that's the reason why the free radical substitution of alkanes, right? They will be not product specific. We could be getting various products. but X on hydrolysis reaction with water is giving us what? An aldehyde. Okay, generally what happens, so here if you look at the product of the chlorination, we would get the carbon either mono substituted or di substituted or tri substituted. Okay, so when we have the product on reaction with water, so what is it going to do? There will be a substitution of the chlorines with OH, nucleophilic substitution. So what is going to happen here? There will be a nucleophilic substitution. Okay, so that is what will be happening in the second stage, the reaction of X with water. Now the thing is, when we replace the chlorines with OH group, right, what we are going to be getting is alcohols. So if you have one chlorine replaced by OH, we will get what? I mean, mono substituted alcohol. If you have two chlorines replaced, we will get two OH groups on the same carbon. You know what we call it as? We will be calling it as a diol. It's a geminal diol. Both OH groups on same carbon means what? Geminal. If both OH groups are in different carbons means adjacent carbon means we'll call it as what? Vicinal. Okay. So here geminal diols, right? This is the property of geminal diols. Geminal diols are what? Unstable. So when both the OH are on the same carbon, they will be unstable. They will lose water, thereby forming a carbonyl compound. So if here this question, right, we have to rather work it backwards. So we need to get benzaldehyde. What are we getting? What is this? This is the benzaldehyde, right? So if you want to get benzaldehyde means prior to that, on reaction with water, we should have got the product gem diol. So gem diol we have to form means what? We should be having two chlorines that are getting replaced. Means look at it here. What must be happening when we do the chlorination, right? Here the free radical substitution. Two of the hydrogens must be replaced by chlorine. That's why we will get what? We will get a geminal dihalide. Now geminal dihalides, when we do the reaction with water, we will get what? Geminal diol. Geminal diol will be unstable, it will lose water, thereby we will get what? A carbonyl compound, which is in this case benzaldehyde. So we are trying to work the question from the final product. Okay, so if you want to get the benzaldehyde means we should have had a geminal diol. Geminal diol means the compound X must be having two chlorines on the same carbon, which means what? There must be a substitution of hydrogens by chlorine twice. Okay, so what is this compound X? Basically it is option 2. The carbon must be substituted with two chlorines. Next we have question number 20. This is a rather straightforward question. So what is it? The number of protons, neutrons and electrons in, so what is this? What is this element? Lu. Lu is symbol for what? Lutetium. Okay, so cerium to lutetium, what are these? The lanthanides. Cerium atomic number 58, lutetium atomic number 71. These are all what? Lanthanides. So here they have given us the what is the number that you will show in the top left? It is the mass number. So clearly what is it? So if you look at it, what is given to us? The mass number A is given to us. A is what? 175. And what is the number that will show in the bottom left? It is the atomic number. What is atomic number? 71. From here we have to find number of protons, neutrons and electrons. Straight away, right? Atomic number is what? Atomic number for a neutral atom. Atomic number is what? Number of protons, which is equal to number of electrons also. What is atomic number? Atomic number is number of protons which is equal to number of electrons. Means protons must be 71, electrons also must be 71. We got our answer. We don't need to even bother about what is the neutrons count, isn't it? So what is the answer for this? Option 4. But if you still want to get the neutrons count, if you are attempting this question in the final examination, this is how we will move on to the next question. Okay, but if you want to get the neutrons also, how do you get the neutrons? The number of neutrons will be equal to what? A minus Z, mass number minus atomic number, right? A is what? 175 minus 71. What is it going to be? 104. That will be the number of neutrons. We'll move on to question number 21. This is a question based on the D and F block elements chapter. So we have to find what is the incorrect statement. We have to find out what is the incorrect statement. Okay, so look at this statement. So here we have to read all the statements and then we will be able to tell the answer. The transition metals and their compounds are known for their catalytic activity due to their ability to adopt multiple oxidation states and to form complexes. Yes, that is one of the reason why the transition elements like platinum, palladium, nickel, they'll be able to act as catalysts in various chemical reactions as well as the industrial methods of preparation. Like we look at the hydrogenation of oils, or the hydrogenation of alkenes, alkynes. Okay, so various reactions, right? Even if you talk about the Haber's process or contact process, most of the industrial processes we will be using what, either the transition metal itself or compounds of the transition metals. Okay, what is the reason for this? Because they can show multiple oxidation states, and also they will be able to form various complexes. Second, so this is the correct one, and we are looking for what? Incorrect. Second statement is what? Interstitial compounds are those that are formed when small atoms like hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen are trapped inside the crystals of the lattice of metals. That is also correct. So what do we call these compounds? As interstitial compounds. Remember, when we have hydrogen trapped into the transition metal lattice, right? So we'll call it as what? Interstitial hydrides. Interstitial hydrides will be non-stoichiometric. They will not have any stoichiometric formula. So in hydrogen chapter, we'll talk about what are the different types of hydrides. We'll have the ionic hydrides that will be formed with the first and second group elements. Then we'll have covalent hydrides, which will be formed with generally the elements of 13th to say for example 17th group. Then we'll have interstitial hydrides. What are interstitial hydrides? The hydrides where hydrogen will be trapped into the lattice of the transition metals, which will not be having any proper stoichiometric formula. Okay, so that is also correct, interstitial compounds. Then we have statement 3. What is statement 3? Oxidation states of chromium in CrO4 2 minus and Cr2O7 2 minus are not the same. So they are saying oxidation states are not the same. So how do we check it? We have to look at what will be the oxidation state of chromium. So what is the rule? We'll follow that sum rule method, right? So chromium, let us say X, 4 oxygens are there, 4 into minus 2. So we are trying to calculate first in CrO4 2 minus. So X plus 4 into minus 2. 4 into minus 2 means what? Minus 8. So X minus 8 is equal to minus 2, means X will be equal to what? 8 will go to the other side. 8 minus 2 is what? 6. In CrO4 2 minus, what is the oxidation state of chromium? It is plus 6. What about Cr2O7 2 minus? We have 2. How many chromiums are there? 2 chromiums. Okay. So 2x plus 7 into minus 2. How many oxygens are there? 7 oxygens. Totally, what is the overall charge? Minus 2. Okay. So from here, look at it. 2x minus 14 is equal to minus 2. Means 2x is equal to what? 14 will go to the other side. It will become plus. 14 minus 2 is 12. 2x is equal to 12. Means x is equal to what? Here also plus 6. So what is the conclusion here? Both in CrO4 2 minus as well as the Cr2O7 2 minus dichromate ion, the oxidation states of chromium are what? Same, plus 6. But what they are giving in the statement? In the statement they are saying the oxidation states will be different, which means what? This is the wrong one. So oxidation state of chromium in both these ions, right, will be what? Same. This will be same. Okay, so which means we got our answer, because what we are looking for? We are looking for what? The incorrect statement. So this is the one that is incorrect. Now look at statement 4. What is statement 4? This is a very interesting statement. Cr2 plus, because Cr2 plus, what is the arrangement, electronic arrangement is what? D4 structure. Chromium 2 plus will be having what? It will be having argon D4. That is the structure of Cr2 plus. Okay. Fe2 plus. Fe2 plus will have a structure of D6. Argon D6. That is the structure of Fe2 plus. But look at it. Cr2 plus is a stronger reducing agent than Fe2 plus. Stronger reducing agent means what? It basically means that Cr2 plus can easily undergo oxidation to form Cr3 plus. Cr2 plus can easily undergo oxidation to form Cr3 plus than Fe2 plus undergoing oxidation to form Fe3 plus. See, the usual understanding that people will be having is, if you look at Fe3 plus structure, right, Fe2 plus is what? D6. Means Fe3 plus will become what? D5. Whereas Cr3 plus, Cr2 plus is what, D4, right? Cr3 plus will have what structure? D3 structure. The number of electrons in the D level, what is it? D3. So by the look of it, what do you observe? Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus, iron is getting into more stable arrangement. That is what it appears like, D5, half filled D structure. Okay, than in the case of the shift from Cr2 plus to Cr3 plus. But practically when it is observed, right, the oxidation of Cr2 plus to Cr3 plus will be more favored. Energetically, that will be more favored than the oxidation of Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus. Okay, on the look of it, when we see the electronic arrangement, what is the sense that we get? Since Fe is reaching a more stable half-filled D structure, we expect that probably this oxidation happens easier, and hence we expect Fe2 plus is a better reducing agent, but not. In water, what will be the better reducing agent? It will be the Cr2 plus that will be the better reducing agent. Why? Because in water, right, the chromium 3 plus will have the split, the octahedral split. So which means we will have the T2G and Eg level. So in the lower level, right, we will have what? The 3 orbitals. So octahedral will be having 3 orbitals, right, in the lower level. So the D3 structure means what? We have to fill one with each. One of these lower level D orbitals are filled with 1 electron each. So on contrary to what we observe, right? So whereas if you are trying to fill the electrons here, then 5 electrons means what? We are not going to be having 5 electrons means what? So we'll fill one with each and then we'll start pairing. So comparatively, what is going to be more stable? Because it is the half-filled arrangement. Here the D3 becomes what? D3 becomes half-filled arrangement. Okay. So energetically, right, which is more favored? The Cr2 plus becoming Cr3 plus will be more favored. Means chromium 2 plus can easily undergo oxidation. That means chromium 2 plus will be able to act as a better reducing agent. Okay. So the incorrect one, right? What is the incorrect one? It is option 3. That is the incorrect one. Next we have question number 22. Okay, so this is the question that has come in fact one of the previous year NEET itself. Okay, so which of the following is a cationic detergent? Generally the detergents, right, will be having anionic detergent, even soaps also. Okay, so soaps, the micelle part, right, what is the part that will form the micelle? If you look at soap as the sodium or potassium salt of long chain carboxylic acid, the carboxylate ion, that is the anion. The anion part is the one that will form the micelle. Okay, the anion part is the one that will form the micelle. But here what are we are looking for? A cationic detergent. So you know what will be the cationic detergent? It will be, what is this? Cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide. So cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide, right? If you look at the structure, we will have, how we will look at it is, so when this is forming an micelle, the part that will be having the hydrocarbon chain, what is it? It is the cation part. In case of a carboxylate ion, right, in case of a carboxylate ion, so what is the carboxylate? Generally it is what? RCOO minus. So it is the anionic part that is going to form the micelle. But in this case, the Br minus, once the Br minus ions are separated, the micelle is going to be formed from the cationic part. We can see the cationic part is going to be forming the micelle. Okay, so this is an example of what? A cationic detergent. So what is the answer for this? Cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide. Okay, the others, right? So if you see the other molecules, all the others, so we can see sodium stearate. So Na plus ions, when they release, the remaining part will be what? Anion. Here also sodium is released, means the remaining part will be what? Anion part. Okay, here also sodium, when sodium is released, the remaining part will be what? Anion part. So always, generally when you look at most of the examples, we will be having the anionic part that will be forming the micelle. So examples like this, right, what is it? Cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide, we will have the cation that will be forming the micelle. Okay, we'll move on to next question. This is a question based on liquid solutions. The freezing point depression constant, Kf. Okay, so what is the other name for this? Cryoscopic constant, right? Kf value is given as what? For benzene 5.12, Kelvin kg per mole. Okay, the freezing point depression for the solution of molality. What is the molality given to us? 0.078. Small m represents what? Molality unit, right? So what is the molality unit? It is moles per kg, number of moles of solute present in 1 kg of solvent. Okay, so the freezing point depression for the solution of molality 0.078 molal containing a non-electrolyte solute. Why are they saying non-electrolyte? Means there will be no dissociation. Okay, so we have to give the value rounded off to 2 decimal places. So it's a straight question, right? What is it? Delta TF value is what they are asking. The freezing point depression value. Delta TF is equal to what? Kf into m. What is delta TF value? Kf into m, right? Kf is what? The depression constant or the cryoscopic constant. What is the value? 5.12 Kelvin kg per mole. And what is the molality value? 0.078. Okay, so just simple multiplication. What is the multiplication? If you do the multiplication, it will come close to what? 0.399 something. Okay, and then when we round it off, because we have to round it off to 2 decimal places. When we round it off to 2 decimal places, what will be the answer? It will be 0.40 Kelvin. So when we round it off to 2 decimal places, right, what is the answer? It will be 0.40 Kelvin. So here we are even required to look at our understanding of how do we round off the numbers. So how do we round off the numbers? The last digit, right, is more than 5. Round off means more than 5 means we have to add 1. When you add 1, what is it going to become? It will become 0.40. We have question number 24. So this is a question based on the periodic classification of elements in terms of the naming. Okay, so what is here? We have to find out what is the incorrect match. So on the left side column A, B, C, D, right, we are given the names as per the numbering system. Okay, on the right side we have the officially declared names. So what is there? Option A, what is it? Un, nil, anium. So what is un means what? 1. Nil means 0. Okay, un means what? 1. Always these names will be ending with IUM. Okay, so un, nil, anium means what? 101. So what is the element with atomic number 101? It is mendelevium. So this is option A. A is matched to 1. That is correct. Okay, then un, nil, trium. Un is 1, nil means 0, tri means what? 3. 103. What is the element with atomic number 103? Lawrencium. So these, right, both mendelevium and Lawrencium, they will belong to what? The actinoid series, the 5F series. Okay, so this is also correct. So B is matched to 2, that is also correct. C is matched to 3. Okay, what is it? Un, nil, hexium. So un means what? 1, nil means 0, hex means what? 6. 106. What is 106 element with atomic number 106? What? Seaborgium. So this is also correct. Means C is matched to 3. By now itself we will get our answer. Okay, so what will be the incorrect match? It is going to be the option 3. Okay, so we will be able to conclude if you are confident, right? So what is it? The next match. What is the next match? Un, anium. So un, anium means what? 1, 1, 1. Un is 1, another un is 1, another un is 1. Okay, 1, 1, 1. What is the element with atomic number 1, 1, 1? It is Roentgenium. So what is the answer for this? I mean the match correct official name, declared official name is what? Roentgenium. But look at what they have given in terms of the matching. D is matched to 4. What is 4? Dumstadium. Okay, so this is not the Dumstadium, but what is it? It is Roentgenium. Okay, so the answer for this is what? Option 3, which is the incorrect match. So these kind of questions, right? I mean, on this naming part, we can usually get questions on either asking us to write the naming as per the numbering system, or questions like this. So these kind of questions we can only answer if we are able to remember what are these elements. Otherwise, we will not be able to answer. So if element with 101 is mendelevium, so if we do not remember the name, right, then we will not be able to answer these kind of questions. So in that sense, right, this is more of a memory based kind of question. Next we have a question from liquid solutions. The mixture which shows positive deviation from the Raoult's law. So when the positive deviations will come, if we have the mixtures, right? So we have, say for example, component A or component B. In component A, we'll have interactions between the A and A type of molecules. In B, we'll have B to B interactions. When we will get positive deviations, when we mix them together, we are going to be getting AB interactions between the A molecules and B molecules. Okay. When these interactions are weaker, when the A and B interactions are weaker, right, then what happens? These molecules will now be more free to evaporate. Okay, so which means what? The vapor pressure will be more than the expected value. Okay, and that is what we call as the positive deviation. So the vapor pressure will be more than the expected vapor pressure as per the Raoult's law. Okay, so that is what we call as the positive deviation. Here we need to find out which of them will be giving us the positive deviation. So we'll just go one by one. Benzene and toluene. So benzene is non-polar, toluene is also what? Non-polar. Almost comparable molecular mass. So what we will be able to see is they will not be a near ideal mixture. So ideal mixture means what? AA interactions and BB interactions will be almost comparable to AB interactions. That is what is ideal mixture. They will not be true ideal mixture, but to a large extent they will be able to not show significant deviations. Okay, so this is not going to be showing much of positive deviation. What about acetone and chloroform? Acetone is what? CH3 CO CH3. This is acetone. Chloroform is what? CH Cl3. So in fact what we'll see is when we mix them, right, we'll see a hydrogen bonding happening between the hydrogen of the chloroform and the oxygen of the acetone. So in fact what we'll observe here is that AB interactions will be getting stronger. So this in fact shows what? This will be showing negative deviation. When the AB interactions are stronger, when the molecules of A and molecules of B are attracting strongly, right, then what happens? These molecules will be tightly bound. So they would not evaporate as much expected also. That is the reason why vapor pressure, the calculated value will be less than the Raoult's law value. That is why we will call it as what? Negative deviation. So acetone and chloroform mixture, it shows what? Negative deviation. Then chloroethane and bromoethane. Okay, so these are also not polar molecules. The polarity value will be significantly less, and they will be almost comparable in terms of properties, chloroethane and bromoethane. So what we'll see is they will also be showing not much significant deviation. So neither on the positive side nor on the negative side. So this also is not. So by now itself we got our answer. What will be the correct answer for this? Ethanol and acetone. So ethanol, right? Normally ethanol. What is ethanol? C2H5OH. Ethanol itself will have the intermolecular hydrogen bonding. Ethanol will be having intermolecular hydrogen bonding. Now when we bring in acetone and add it, the acetone molecules will come in between. So what is going to happen? So pure ethanol will be having hydrogen bonding. But when we are adding acetone, what happens? The acetone molecules will be coming between the ethanol molecules. Okay, and as a result of it, what is going to be observed? Some hydrogen bonds will be getting what? Broken. So previously when we have all ethanol, right, so we'll have significant amount of hydrogen bonding just in the pure ethanol. But when we add acetone, what is happening? The hydrogen bonding is significantly broken. So previously, like say for example, we have ethanol, okay, so and another ethanol, C2H5. So hydrogen bonding will be between oxygen of one ethanol and hydrogen of the other. Okay, now in between if the acetone is coming, so what is going to happen? The hydrogen bonding extent is broken. So as a result of it, what we observe is the AB interactions, right? AB interactions means what? Interactions between the acetone and the ethanol, they'll be getting reduced. Okay, so which means what? This mixture is going to be showing positive deviations. So what is the correct answer for this? Ethanol and acetone mixture shows positive deviation. Benzene toluene, not much deviation. Same is the case with chloroethane and bromoethane. But acetone chloroform, they will show negative deviation. Okay, so the correct answer for this is what? Option 4. Now this is about the part 1 video where we covered 25 questions, and the remaining 20 questions we will see in the second part video.